Hello, I'm Dr. David Sosen. I'm a medical doctor and psychiatrist, and I've been specializing in the treatment of attention deficit disorder for many years. I've written 2 books on the subject, and I'm the director of the Headache and Attention Deficit Disorder Treatment Center in Orange County, California. Before going any further, let's put aside media scare stories and set the record straight. ADD is very real. It's not a fad condition that's being overdiagnosed and overtreated. Unfortunately, even to this day, too many ADD cases are going unrecognized, undiagnosed, and untreated. One of the most persistent myths about ADD is that it goes away after childhood, but nothing can be further from the truth. After one of my own children was diagnosed with ADD, I knew there's a genetic link and that it runs in families. So I looked in the mirror and realized that I had had ADD all of my life and that I still do. One of my patients, Lee, is a perfect example of someone who's had ADD all of his life but never knew it until he started medical school in his late 20s. I hope that the following interview with Lee will demonstrate that with proper medical treatment, adults with ADD can finally have a chance to fulfill their dreams and reach their highest potential. Hey, you made it through the first 2 years of medical school, which are the hardest because they're so involved with rote memorization, as I recall from my own medical school days. Where are you now?
I am working in the hospital, doing my what they call clerkships, which are the 3rd and the 4th year, where you're directly seeing patients and reporting to a team. It's a much different world than rote memorization.
Let's just review the basic issues with ADD and see how they seem to have affected you in your life. The 3 hallmark issues are distractibility, impulsivity, and hyperactivity. It used to be that youngsters who were physically hyperactive, they were moving around a lot and they couldn't sit still, that's what tagged them. And we even call this hyperactivity syndrome of children, but that's not what it's really all about. It doesn't matter whether you're physically hyperactive or not. What you're dealing with, of course, is your brain, which is spinning around, and that's hyperactive.
With regards to distractibility, it's not that I'm not paying attention to something, it's that I'm paying attention to everything. A noise, a temperature level, or a comfort level, or it just, you're aware. And when you're reading or doing a task, you're just aware of every task that you have to do, or every task that you haven't done in the past, for your entire life.
Which gets in the way
of
a
nightmare,
your completing the task at hand. And the impulsivity is, well, you tend to jump into things without looking ahead a little bit, and maybe that's compensatory where you just have to do it on guts or something. Those are the 3 things. And what do you make out of them in terms of your own life in the past and now that you're in the phases of becoming a physician?
People think of ADD as attention deficit. I never like to call it attention deficit. When you can harness it and feel like you're creative and sensitive, then you want to start looking at it like a positive thing.
Yeah.
When it's under control. But in a school setting specifically, it's a nightmare.
The word overwhelmed comes to mind.
That's how I was originally diagnosed. It was in the first semester of medical school that I had found out, attention. I never.
How did you find out?
It. My wife, I think she had seen me struggling when we finally started because we began medical school together. She went to the psychologist and I guess he picked up on it.
So you went on Ritalin first?
Yes.
And what did you notice?
A big difference.
How has the medication helped your distractibility? Is it a major thing or what?
It helps you do your task to completion. It helps you focus on what you're doing at the time.
Was the reading more acceptable? I mean, I can recall reading pages and pages of material And if you ask me, well, what are you reading? At a certain point, I might not even be able to say, I'm not sure what I'm reading because I'm really not taking it in. Just think back in grade school, if you even remember, there probably were a lot of times when you weren't getting stuff because you thought you read it, but it didn't go in. It's like the material just wasn't absorbed. But if you go on something like Ritalin, the words should penetrate and stay.
That's what equalizes the playing field and will make
Yes.
you like any other person. It's
Exactly.
it's not a magic cape that
Right.
says that you now have photographic memory to know everything,
Right.
but it gives you an ability. If I want to read, I can read.
Exactly. With somebody with A.D.D, the medicine is like the missing link. Without the medicine, you're somewhat handicapped. And if you take somebody and you give them a stimulant, they don't have A.D.D. Yeah, they might show some improved performance, but it's not the dramatic improvement. It's not like night and day. You can ask anybody with A.D.D the before and after situation, like before they went on medication and after they went on medication, and they just sort of, they can't even find the words to describe the difference in the way their brains are working. And it's an interesting feeling if you're not sure you've ever had it before. When you were a little kid, did you feel like you were wanting to fit in, but yet there was something about you that was a little different from other kids, like you couldn't quite put your finger on it? I marched to a different drummer, and that is one of the statements that's made about ADDers.
That's why I think that positive encouragement is so important, and why it lacks in the school when it comes to somebody you see struggling to do something, and why it can be so devastating.
Yes.
Is because that none of us really like to try things that we're not good at.
Exactly.
But somebody with ADD might be terrified of trying something out of embarrassment, out of feeling
Exactly.
stupid, again, getting in
Yeah,
trouble,
that's
humiliated. I never bought lunch from the time, for my whole elementary school. I never bought lunch.
Why is that?
Afraid, because I never did it before. I was afraid of the procedure of going to hand. I mean, it's a ridiculous thing.
Yeah, it sounds ridiculous, but
Fear of embarrassment.
you weren't quite sure how you go about it, and everybody else is doing it as a routine, and you don't want to be conspicuous, so you build it up in your mind, and then all of a sudden having lunch is a big deal, and the more you avoid it, the bigger
I had a
it
perfect
seems.
attendance record until one day I think it was mandatory to buy lunch.
You begin to get fearful of something, and you start avoiding it as if you're in mortal danger. It's primitive stuff.
For me in medical school, I needed to have some positive experiences in which I could think on the spot,
Yes.
make it mandatory for myself that, okay, in medicine it's a given that you're put on the spot and you can be humiliated.
Addressing your fears, addressing the unknown is challenging, and it's anxiety provoking.
Debilitating at times.
Yeah, let's say you go on the medication and then your grades go up, your performance goes up. Then you have real evidence that you're doing okay. You say, well, I'm doing it. And then that becomes a positive thing that makes it easier for you to do better again and again.
There's days when I say I am standing on Mount Everest today. You have no idea that right here, what I just did there, that presentation I just gave in front of you, 8 people in front of this patient. I just accomplished something you have no idea.